and welcome to episode number 83 of the Lines podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by Brett Collson and FairwayJay as we break down all the big bets, all the big news, everything going on in this crazy gambling industry of ours. Sports betting, DFS, poker, anything you can gamble on, we will talk about here on this podcast. Of course, as always, we're available on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google. So please go in, subscribe, rate, review. We really, really do appreciate that and helps other people find this podcast. So appreciate all you guys that have done that already. And if you haven't, please make your way over there and do that for us. Find us on the Twitter at TheLines at PlayPicksUS. We will talk about some stories coming out about some big parlays and stuff and kind of figure out if this is good or not for basically not only betting in general, but just for the growth of the industry. We'll talk about some of these niche things that are growing in, that maybe could become betting events down the line here. Talk about the MVP race and how things are going there. And of course, we'll look ahead to week 12. But before we do that, let's go ahead and start here with some really big news that came about last night, Brett. I got tipped off just about an hour before this news was going to break that there was going to be an announcement, but didn't give me exactly what the announcement was going to be. But some pretty big news that doesn't necessarily affect the rest of the country as much as it does Nevada, but big news nonetheless.
Yeah, well, you were the guy who kind of broke the news in our chat. Why don't you tell us what happened?
Yeah,
how did this all come about?
Yeah, I mean, it was so William Hill. You guys obviously know William Hill. They are located in several states across the U.S. and of course a big bookmaker overseas. They went ahead and purchased CG Technology, which is a sportsbook operator here in Nevada. They have had a kind of a checkered past, Jay. I think you could say at best been fined by the Nevada Gaming Commission on several occasions, almost actually got the death penalty this last time that they had to go forth in front of the Gaming Commission for allowing people to bet mobily out of state, which of course is a big no-no. And so somehow they did continue to survive. And but that being said, I'm sure you've heard the rumors as well over the years. Basically, they've been for sale in perpetuity. This isn't like William Hill scooped in and decided to buy them out. I from what I've heard, CG has kind of been on the market for several years if you were able to meet whatever the asking price was for them.
Yes, the CG Tech, I've had their app and I've played at them, and I haven't been pleased at times to see what's transpired with the fines they've taken in and some of their business dealings. But this is a good take for William Hill. The sportsbooks themselves are really well done. And certainly from what William Hill has from a sportsbook presence, these are an upgrade to some of their product. I'm on distribution list, so I get the announcements and saw the press release that William Hill was taking over. And again, I think CG Tech, because of their checkered history, as you mentioned, and some of their issues going, we knew that there would probably come a time when it was takeover. I always thought William Hill might be someone that would be in contention and consideration for that. And now with their El Dorado purchase, they're really expanding and growing. And this gives William Hill a real presence on the Strip with some of the properties from the Palazzo to the Cosmopolitan. They're just off it at the Palms. You got the Tropicana, and of course the Venetian is a special book there in the prime spot. So good take for William Hill. And I don't know where CG Tech goes from here with the rest, but those are desired properties and desired sports books to have, certainly.
Brett, this is when you kind of look at this and you wonder, like, why would they go ahead and do this? I mean, I guess if you're William Hill and you do still have your sights set on expanding across the country, and one, I think William Hill just really does, and Adam Candy actually kind of commented on this with me last night as well, was, William Hill, I do think values just the retail experience of sports books. I think that's something that they are very big on, and we can kind of see that with even some of the deals that they've made in some of the other states as well. But also, I think as you kind of set your sights on some of these other states, I think having some of these marquee properties under your belt certainly can't hurt whenever you're going in and pitching yourself and trying to, get in on some of these other places and become the official, provider for whatever it might be. racetrack XYZ or, card room XYZ. I mean, we never know how these deals are going to work out in some of these other states that don't have laws on the books as we currently sit. And, instead of saying that we're in Arizona Charlie's and Hooters, you can now say that you're in, the Cosmo, the Venetian, the Palms and stuff like that. And that certainly probably has to help your case, I would imagine, with some of these dealings.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what we were talking about yesterday is we were trying to figure out why they did this. And yeah, having the attachment to the Venetian and the Palms and the Cosmopolitan is certainly going to help your brand as well. So I mean, it gives you a little more. I don't know what the word is, but I mean, you're going to have bettors look at that and be like, all right, well, they're associated with these brands, and as they expand into new states, they're going to be more likely to maybe work or bet with William Hill over some of these other brands. So just the recognition part of it, is the biggest part of it. But, also just having that more presence in Vegas is going to help them as well. Yeah.
Brand awareness, Jay, I think is something we can probably look at here because with the way William Hill was located, I mean, you and I live in the industry, so we're very familiar with William Hill. But, if you're just visiting strip casino XYZ that are like all located next to each other, you're not going to stumble across a William Hill book. I mean, they're located in a couple of places downtown. They're way down, they're way down the strip at the Sahara. If you want to, if people make their way all the way down there, and then they're, way south of town at the M. And so it's, if you're just kind of like strip hopping, odds are you were never going to pop into a William Hill book. So they're not going to get your sign up. They're not going to get your app download. They're not going to get you, even having some recognition of them when you come back into town next time. So this does also give them that tourist kind of element to their business that I think that they were probably lacking.
No question. And again, for our listeners that may not be as familiar with Las Vegas, or as you come and wager on the games, William Hill has they've got many locations to bet, but they're isolated and sometimes just smaller. You can walk into, like, for example, next to Harrah's, you can walk into Casino Royale and you go to a bar. You actually go to a bar and there's one person sitting there. And sometimes you might have to wait in line on the busiest times much longer than you would at other locations. So now they've got big sports books with many more screens and ideal seating situations, and can take in more people. And again, back to the brand awareness, it's huge, I think, for them from a presence on the strip to be now in the Palazzo and the Venetian and some of the areas that get more traffic, and see that brand and see that name and recognize it already. They've already had a real convenience because you can go to various places across the state, not just in Las Vegas or Southern Nevada, and pop in and out and make your bets. But as far as a physical presence in a sports book that's much bigger and provides more screens and viewing and seating, I think this certainly builds their awareness and brand, as you said. And as they present themselves more, it's going to give them, I think, an even more powerful advantage moving forward. But I correspond, like I said, with a lot with the William Hill people, and I saw this coming from them. We've seen it now with their branching out in Washington D.C. into with the Washington Capitals and the basketball team, the Wizards, and their expansion into an arena, and they're continuing to grow, and this will only help them continue in Southern Nevada as well.
There's no mobile sign up here, as we've complained about on this podcast several different times, but William Hill has the most interesting setup of them all, where they have cut deals with, there's a company here in Nevada called Golden Gaming, which owns a massive amount of taverns and pubs here that are, kind of sports centric. They got tons of screens and different things like that. And they're called PTs or Sierra Gold, and they're all over. I mean, you basically can't go a few miles in this city without running into one of those. Well, they cut a deal with them where you can go in and you can actually make deposits inside of all of the PTs. They actually cut deals with CVS's and 7-Elevens as well, Brett. So you can go into 7-Eleven and CVS's and actually make deposits into your William Hill account as well. So it's kind of the closest thing we have to being able to not have to physically walk into a casino here. I mean, it still makes more sense if you could do it in your underwear sitting on your couch, but at least they have that going as well. And so again, I think even with the locals, It's a pretty big deal for them because now people just visiting a restaurant or whatever in one of these bigger places might get exposed to the William Hill brand, sign up for an account, and then even if they do live out in the suburbs, you can still pop into CVS or pop into 7-Eleven or a PT's pub or whatever it might be and fund your account should you need to do that.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous that people are walking into a 7-Eleven to make a deposit on a sports betting site. But look, I mean, it's better than what it was before, right? And we're trying to give people better access to these online apps, and whatever avenue we can is positive.
I've talked to those guys. Apparently, people do it a lot, Jay.
True convenience. Yeah. There's no doubt. Yeah, and that's the thing is you don't have to now go whatever it is, fight traffic, get into the larger properties. Potentially, the beauty of having those properties now is I think for viewing and the Strip and when during some of the bigger and main events, they're going to have that presence as well. But William Hill is already they've upgraded certainly some of their sports books in the plaza and some other locations, but the convenience of just running in and out and certainly depositing or withdrawing with the 7-Eleven and the locations you mentioned, that's I think a real plus for them.
Fix the laws, Nevada. Let's go.
I know. Get with the times. Seriously, at the end of the day, the real thing is just get with the times here. But so, Brett, we talked about, on this podcast several different times about the whole Mattress Mac thing, and it certainly was an interesting and a fun story. But one of the things that we brought up was we can't wait to put a bow on this whenever it finally comes out to see what kind of impact, specifically on a state like Mississippi that does not have mobile sports betting outside of what we call Mississippi Mobile, which is, you have to be physically located inside the casino in order to use the app. We were particularly interested in just seeing what kind of impact he would have on that state in general. And we got our news on that yesterday.
Yeah, we were anticipating these numbers coming out because we wanted to see what kind of impact Mattress Mac had on these Mississippi numbers. And it was a huge month of October for the state. Sports betting handle jumped nearly 50% year over year to 48 million. And reportedly, more than 6 million of that came from Mattress Mac betting on his Houston Astros to win the World Series. They did not win. And the books scooped all of those futures bets. In total, revenue soared more than 10 times. Year over year to $12.3 million. So a great month for Mississippi. Even without Mattress Mac, it was a positive month for them. I think handle and revenue would have been up anyway without him. So, but still, he had a massive impact with his more than $6 million in bets just in Mississippi. I think it was more than $13 million spread across 3 states, maybe more. Was it 3 states?
Yeah. He got down here, he got down Jersey, and he got down there in Mississippi. The coast casinos, so the way Mississippi casino things, there's northern, central, and then there's coast casinos. So northern is up in Tunica. That's right kind of on the border there of Tennessee, so not very far from Memphis. Then there's central casinos that are kind of in like Natchez, Mississippi, whatever, so kind of more in the central part of the state. And then the big fancy casinos down on the coast are, the Beau Rivage and some of these other casinos. The Scarlet Pearl, for example, is where Mattress Mac went and at the DraftKings Sportsbook at the Scarlet Pearl put down, as we're talking about, $6.2 million worth of bets here. The coast casinos took in $10.1 million worth of baseball bets. 6.2 of those were Mattress Mac for the month. And they had a hold on Major League Baseball, fellas, of a little bit over 63%. So a baseball hold of the month of a little over 63%. So needless to say, there will never be a month like the month of October of 2019 in the history of any casino ever for any sport in the history of the world, other than if Mattress Mac tries to do this promotion again next year and the Astros make a run. I mean, just nuts. True. Yeah, just nuts.
And what a promotion again for not just the industry in sports betting, but for the state of Mississippi, and for them to be able to, for the casinos to be out and visibly have this kind of promotion for them, and all the states down there that are trying to get sports betting. And if you're going to the areas, you're certainly going to go to Mississippi, and you see it now. You see good, better, and different, whether we just talk about the big bets and these kind of mattress max that step forward. But I think it's really good for the state of Mississippi as well, obviously.
Some of the other numbers have come out. Of course, Pennsylvania really just in its infancy there as far as mobile sports betting going, $241.2 million. That is up 24% just from last month. FanDuel had the big head start there, and they took in 48.9% of the total handle in Pennsylvania. But Brett, we do have DraftKings that just launched over there, and we have Unibet that just launched in Pennsylvania as well. So there are other players coming into the market. But when you kind of see this trend for Pennsylvania, and we consider how little time they've had to really ramp up there, you have to think that they are going to overtake New Jersey here at some point, especially if it'll be a landslide if New York ever gets their act together and gets mobile going up there.
Yeah, we think PA will ultimately pass New Jersey, right? I mean, that is expected given just the size of the states and the populations. And PA just more of a sports state anyway. When is that going to happen? What are we setting the line at here? Because I mean, it is going to happen. I think it's only around less than half right now of what New Jersey is month to month.
Yeah.
But maybe by next football season.
Yeah, I think by next
we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, so let's kind of break it down. I mean, here's the deal. While New Jersey is still drawing from New York City, they're now no longer drawing from Philadelphia, right? Like they're no longer drawing from Philly because there was a lot of people in Philly who were just popping over the border to go place bets in Jersey. Well, they don't have to do that anymore. And now with FanDuel and DraftKings in the state, if you already had an account with FanDuel and DraftKings across the border, then you're good to go, right? And so you're all set, and you don't have to leave your living room now. You certainly don't have to cross across the border over there to go place bets. And so they lost that big area of Philadelphia there as far as drawing in money. So yeah, I'm with you. I think by football season next year, I think it's a very real possibility that Pennsylvania is kind of the lead dog when it comes to that area of the country.
Yeah, then that's huge. And by then we might have some more states that are kind of pulling away from New Jersey and some of these other Northeast states as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see what DraftKings does in PA for the month of November. We'll see we'll definitely revisit that next month. And
of course, in New Jersey, they just keep trucking along here. $487.9 million. That is a new record for the state. I think this is what really, and Jay, we just got off of it about how important it is for mobile, and we really wish that Nevada would get with the times here. Mobile and online accounted for 85.5% of the $487.9 million handle there in New Jersey. I mean, if you are trying to legalize something in your state and you do not look at these numbers and you do not take into account what it means to have mobile sign up and mobile register and mobile funding, I just don't even know what to say to you. 487.9 million and 85.5% of that came from mobile and online.
That's huge, and obviously, but certainly there's some states still moving forward that not only can't get the sports betting press, but if you've got the tribe and the presence like in Florida, you're going to have trouble getting. They're putting the proposals through trying to get the mobile enacted, but it's not going to happen. The tribes have way too much political power and not likely to get through. But for those states that are definitely in position now and have passed bills or are putting sports betting in place, yeah, they should just look at this as the model and say, wow, this is the kind of revenue we can get in with the mobile and online platforms, and that's definitely the way to go. And hope if they're really paying attention, then the neighboring New York should be on this sooner than later, because they continue to just they're losing ground each month that goes by.
West Virginia, 32 million in handle. Iowa, 46 million in handle. And Brett, I think this is the one that kind of pops off the page to me. Indiana coming in at 91 million in handle. Indiana just getting mobile sports betting the week of the week one of the NFL season. So they are pretty new there as well. So yeah, as everybody knows, we're entering week 12 of the NFL. So they've only had mobile sports betting for 11 weeks there in Indiana, 91 million in handle. I think Indiana is certainly, if some of their bordering states don't get their act together and get things going, cough, cough, Illinois up there. Yeah. Indiana has a chance to, break certainly looks like they're going to break that 100 million in handle number here. And maybe even approach kind of that 150 million. Yeah.
They're kind of by themselves right there with several states bordering Indiana, and they pull from Chicago as well. Mm-hmm. And that's a big one. I would love to see a number on the amount of handle just comes from Chicago alone, people driving down to the border. But yeah, I'm not really surprising here to see Indiana ahead of Iowa and West Virginia, just because of the amount of people in the state and surrounding the state too.
We talked a little bit last week real quick about California, how they had introduced a bill over in California for sports betting. Same thing in Florida this week. Florida came through with a bill that has little to no chance of passing. It does not include the Seminole tribe in the bill. And as we know, Brett, as we followed the kind of the DFS comings and goings down there, the Seminole tribe just has so much pull there in Florida. Every casino, if you guys have probably heard of these Hard Rock casinos down there. Well, what you might not have known is they're all Seminole Hard Rock Tampa, Seminole Hard Rock Hollywood. They're, the big thing is that the tribe is out in front of the branding there, and they're actually really huge, big, nice casinos down there in Florida, but they hold so much power here. Can't imagine this is going to ever even approach getting across the finish line here whenever you look at how much pull that the tribes have down there.
Yeah, I think we're years away at least. Very similar to New York and California, where there are just so many interests in a massive state. The tribes, of course, and Disney has also been fighting against this as well. And we know the kind of power Disney has. So, people are gonna see this. There's a great story over at Legal Sports Report if you want to catch up on what's going on in Florida. But I do not see anything happening here.
Same here. All right, let's get into some of the sports gambling news that was going on in the actual gambling part of everything outside of just the political part and whatnot. Brett, there was some parlay news that was really got blown up by Darren Rovell. If you guys are, you probably follow him on Twitter. You might hate follow him, actually. I mean, it's one of those things where you might hate follow him. Like, you don't really want to follow him because half of the stuff he posts is just so goddamn ridiculous. But then you just you still follow him anyway just to see what he's going to post next. And he decided to take a real interest in a youngster who hit some parlays.
Yeah, he found a new Mattress Mac to follow around the past week. This time it's a 23-year-old college kid from New York City who travels across the bridge and fires big parlays on his phone every weekend in New Jersey. And this kid has apparently had a nice little rush this month. Over the past 3 weeks, he's won 4 parlays for $672,000. Last month he hit early this month, he had an $1,800 15-leg parlay for $239,000. And then this past weekend, this is where the story really blew up. He had a $7,000 13-leg parlay for $333,000. And of course, Rovell ran with this. It's got a lot of the stuff Rovell looks for in a story. It's got a big bet, big payout. It's got a young kid who seemingly got self-rich off of this. The problem is, and I don't know this for sure, but this kid is almost certainly betting irresponsibly and above his means. I mean, the parlay that he hit on Sunday has around like a 1% chance of hitting, which means if he's betting these parlays comfortably, he needs millions of dollars without putting himself at risk of going broke. And that part of the story is nowhere to be found in this article by Rovell, because that's not sexy. And by running this story, I feel like Darren Rovell is irresponsible in his reporting, and that's where this becomes dangerous, and that's why there has been a lot of blowback about this.
Yeah, Jay, I mean, this is one of those things where, if you want, we talk about parlays, and yeah, I mean, more times than not, they're really bad bets. I think sometimes it's not the end of the world if you want to, put together a 2 or 3 leg parlay or something like that. But I mean, certainly once you start putting together these ridiculous, huge, long strings, and especially 13 and 15 leg and parlays like that, and now you're starting talking about a guy betting 4 figures on these, as up as high as $7,000 on this, and again, Brett, I guess we don't know. It doesn't seem like in the story it says anything about this kid's past. So I don't know. Maybe his dad's a hedge fund manager and he's worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know about it, whatever. Sure. But if so, that seems like that would have been some pretty good context to add to the story as well here. So I can only assume this is a kid that maybe won a little bit and started kind of pressing his luck. And, Jay, Brett and I talked a little bit offline about this and wanted to get your take for sure. But, I think when there's glamorization of kind of this irresponsible betting, and I think we would say irresponsible just from the standpoint of that 99.9% of the betting public should never be betting not just $1,800 on a bet ever, but certainly never $1,800 on a parlay of any sort or whatever, and especially not $7,000 on a multi-leg parlay and all that. And so you're kind of like glamorizing this big bet, big payout, life, kind of like life-changing type money situation when this is literally, I mean, we might go another 2 years, 3 years without hearing of another $7,000 13 leg parlay hitting again. And so I don't know, to me, it seems like we're putting across the wrong message as we're trying to grow sports betting across the country.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on so much of this, and much of it gets back to obviously clicks and reads and pulling viewers and interest to some of the platforms that are putting out the stories. But there's no question that when I saw the bets again and I see the huge money lines included and I see all the favorites included, ask a sportsbook director. They're not turning down these bets. They're not saying we don't want these. They want them all day long because they're going to, in the end, come out ahead. And it's good that I compliment. I get text the other day from a friend who sends me very similar parlays, much less money, wagering $20, $30 to win. A few hundred instead of getting 45 or 90 to 1, he's getting payout 17. And these are not good bets in the long run. But from an entertainment standpoint and for bet a little to win a lot, that's fine. And I use a poker analogy a lot, having played cash quite a bit, but certainly tournament poker. Tournament poker is like winning an 18 parlay. You gotta get through a bunch of landmines to get to the final table, and a lot of it becomes luck. And when towards the end, and many of these parlays are set up that way. And whether it's irresponsible reporting or not, I don't know. I think there's some good stories that can be had, and it's good for the sports betting industry to see these. But no question, I think you have to understand that these odds are stacked against you when you start making these kind of numbers in terms of parlays and 8-teamers. But to put up that kind of money, he mentioned in the story, I think the kid that, I was going to bet even more, but he also mentioned that he's, had some losers in the parlays, and those need to be brought to the attention because over the long term, if you're just playing the parlays like this, you're going to struggle, you're going to lose. And hopefully if he's winning enough, he can be a little more disciplined in some of his plays and bets as well.
Yeah, Brett, I guess my biggest kind of issue here is people were, and we started the show with this, people were saying like, well, yeah, y'all didn't have a problem though when, you're blowing up this Mattress Mac thing. But again, there was so much context involved with the Mattress Mac thing. Yeah, Mattress Mac was betting millions of dollars, but it was well known, one, that he was super rich, two, that he was doing it as a hedge. The guy was flying all over the place on his own private friggin' plane, for crying out loud. I mean, like, this is not a situation of a young 20-something who's making these type of bets. I mean, this was the Mattress Mac situation to me is completely different and not even comparable in a situation like this because we had the context of what was going on around the Mattress Mac situation.
Yeah, it's not the same thing at all. We know what Mattress Mac was. I mean, he was out there telling his story. I don't know what this kid is doing. I mean, is this degenerate behavior? Does he actually have an edge on the books with these bets? I doubt it. And this doesn't, like, everybody has their own bankroll that they're working with. I can't imagine that this is just a entertainment thing for him. Nobody's betting $7,000 on a 15-leg parlay for entertainment. I don't care what your role is. It feels wrong to glamorize it, like
Right.
you said. And that's the problem I have with it.
Yeah. Same
Because for this guy, there's how many guys who are out there losing and losing and losing because of bets like this.
Right. And I just don't want people to think, I guess more than anything, I just don't want people to think that doing stuff like this is ever going to work out for them. Because like, it's just not. It's like, you're never going to, like Jay said, I am perfectly fine with somebody doing a $25 lottery ticket every week. I think that's kind of fun. I've told you every single week I do like a YOLO teaser thing, where I'll do like 10 legs of a teaser or something. And just, if it hits, it hits and whatever. And that is strictly not to make money. That is strictly for entertainment purposes for me. And I like being able to just kind of be like, oh yeah, whatever. I'll put $50 on this teaser and then it'll pay out 800 or something, if it were to hit. But there is just no chance in the world that, see, even my dog is all upset about this whole thing right here. I mean, that ought to let everybody know, what's going on with this. But yeah, I mean, look, I think for us, we understand working in media, and Jay, you brought it up. I mean, we understand sometimes you have to put things out there to draw traffic and get clicks. And it certainly Ravel's job. That is what he is. He's basically a professional click getter at this point. But I still think with that, and Brett, I think you would agree with that. I think there is at least a small amount of responsibility that needs to be taken here, even if you are a professional click grabber.
Yeah, especially now when we're in the early stages of this here in the U.S. There's so many people who don't understand how this works, and we'll get into that a little bit more here with our next topic. But it's just important to just give the full context of what's going on here, because I feel like there were pieces of this story that were left out.
All right, so let's talk about some of these other things here, these niche betting events, and curious as to, what we kind of think about this just in general. And I think this could even be, we'll set this up. Brett, let's go ahead and set this up with the topics that we have listed here. And then I think that this can be expanded even into some of the other things that people might be more familiar with.
Yeah, so at TheLines, we've been following politics betting and odds for close to a year now, because, I mean, let's face it, politics has become something of a sporting event here in this new age. And we've been looking at the odds of a Donald Trump impeachment this week as well, while the hearings are taking place, because even if you can't bet on it, and you can't do that legally here in the US, but it's still fascinating to see how betting markets are moving in Europe on these markets based on what's happening in the news. And regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, and we certainly won't touch on that in this podcast or anywhere on our sites, we only care about the betting side of it. I love it, though. I mean, the Trump versus Hillary markets were captivating in 2016, and next year could be even better. So this is something that we are definitely following. And even though, right now you can't bet on it here in the US, I think it's just worth watching from afar to see how people are betting on this and what the books are doing with it, because this is all over the news, and it's going to continue to grow here over the next year.
So Jay, we have in politics, they're doing, like game shows, for example, and there's fantasy leagues around some of these reality shows and things. I think even this extends, what I was talking about earlier was, I think this extends even into kind of the esports realm, where we're still looking at this kind of new emerging thing that's not a lot of prize money involved. Maybe there could be ways that things could be manipulated and whatnot. I am actually okay with taking bets on all of these things, but you just have to keep the limits to the point where no shenanigans could take place. And as long as the books are willing to do that, then I don't have a problem with it, because people just want to take a flyer on something that they think is fun or funny or that they're following anyway. So they want to be able to talk about it at the water cooler with their buddy that they've got a ticket on this guy to get voted off of Survivor, or for this person to win the next election. Like that stuff's all fine with me, as long as you cap it, at a couple $100 or something, or whatever it might be. Because what I don't want to happen is we make this okay and we legalize this stuff, and then we make it so the limit's so big to where it actually becomes something that people would even entertain going and trying to manipulate some stuff for their own benefit through their bets.
Yeah, I agree. I think the limits need to be kept in place, and I also think because of the liquidity of the market, you see these numbers and odds are going to move. I don't know what the impeachment odds were even 3 weeks ago on Trump, but I see he's now minus 300 to be as the favorite to be impeached. And if, for example, if your limits were 500 and you got a few $500 bets, you're going to move it a lot quicker because you don't have as much handle going in on these. But I'm okay as well with seeing these and the Jeopardies, and I think it's good for entertainment, certainly. We just talked about are you going to see more of that out there than just for the visibility and maybe traffic and such. But I'm okay with it. I know in Nevada here we didn't have the ability to bet on off-field action. I think prior to 2017, I don't even think you could bet on like a MVP in the NFL because it was being done by the voters. So now we slowly saw that transition into being able to bet on it. Limits are kept in line, but I think some of that, as far as the expansion, we certainly see that with some of the new sports books out in New Jersey as they're running different promotions and they're paying out early. We're going to get to some of that, but the ability to maybe have these and allow them with certain limits expands their reach a little bit and provides more entertainment as well.
Brett, like you mentioned, in here in the sheet we have the Jeopardy tournament that's they're promoting, and it's going to be like 3 of the greatest Jeopardy champions of all time going head to head on this, and they're not going to take betting on it because it's a taped event. And I think that's the same thing that happens with Survivor because it's a taped event and whatnot. But I mean, as you point out with the Jeopardy deal, I mean, you could definitely take bets before they tape it. I think that would be perfectly fine and don't see any reason why you wouldn't do that. And I think you can't just blanket the game show thing either because this was pointed out to me. I'm not a big reality show dude. I don't really watch any of those things, but there are people who are super into it. I guess the Big Brother thing actually does happen live. I guess the voting off of people and all that actually does happen like live.
Does, yeah.
And whatnot. So there were people saying you can't just clump everything into the same pile because there's different functionalities of how these different things work and stuff. And I think if you just be smart about it all, this can be something that people should be able to go in and bet on and have fun. And maybe so long as you're not going to get rich off of it. But like I said, if you want to be able to sit on a Thursday morning before the Emmys or Oscars or whatever, the grand finale of friggin' Big Brother happens or something, you want to say you know what, I've got $50 on yada, yada, yada winning this whole thing. I don't see a problem with it.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think the operators would love to be able to do it as well because it generates interest from a subset of potential bettors that you wouldn't get normally. And you're also normalizing betting as part of like your regular life. It'll help people understand how it works because they can attach it to something they care about. So I think it's great. I would love to see this Jeopardy, the greatest of all time tournament, see odds on that. Even though it is taped, like you said, list odds now, and then remove them once the show is being taped. So I mean that's the kind of stuff that I think they could do if they were smart about it.
All right, I'm not going to start with Brett on this one because I know he has a strong opinion here. So I'll start with you, Jay. Lamar Jackson was paid out by PointsBet on any MVP futures any MVP future tickets that were out there. Now, PointsBet has done this on several occasions before. This is something that it's nothing new to this company for them to come out and pay out some of these things early here. But here we are paying out an NFL MVP as we head into week 12 of the season. What do you think about all this? Do you care one way or the other?
Yeah, I think, again, we've seen PointsBet do this, and my thought as well, initially when they started, it was certainly they don't have a lot of customers. They've got to build their base, and they've got to offer certain promotions, and by paying out, they can then promote that, hey, we paid out early, and X amount of players. I don't know if they're disclosing all the volume or the handle, but I think on this case they did, that they've got a certain amount of players that are being paid out early, and that they're going to pay out any other MVP winners if it was a player other than Jackson. But I guess I keep getting back to you looking at Nevada. You don't see these kind of promotions, and maybe we're going to see them moving forward, and maybe it would be better for business and the competition. But for PointsBet, I think, again, it's back to them probably wanting some of the promotion, and they're saying they want to reward the players that took a chance on a long shot like Lamar Jackson early in the season. We want to pay them out early, but I'm not a big proponent of it. I understand why they're doing it, and I think from a business standpoint and a marketing standpoint, if they can generate that for themselves, that's positive, but I'm not a big proponent of being able to do it, I guess.
So, Brad, I know you're not a fan of this, and I guess we can start with saying here, I mean, we all know why they're doing it. You're getting free headlines, and free headlines to a book that, let's be frank, they're probably number 4 or 5 over there in the state of New Jersey, and they're way far down when in comparison to the other big books out there. So, any pub is good pub, any free anything is great. And so let's just at least preface it by saying we know why they're doing it.
We do. And we talked about that on this podcast many times, but I still have several issues with this. First of all, once again, PointsBet is the ultimate decider in all things sports, and paying out futures based on really no actual reasoning other than what? Like Lamar Jackson is the favorite right now? I mean, Russell Wilson was the favorite last week. Why didn't they pay out those futures? And what if Jackson gets hurt on Monday Night Football this week and falls behind Russ and Watson for MVP? Are they going to pay those tickets out early? I mean, like, what are we doing here? This is completely arbitrary, and it's not what sports betting is in the rest of the world. Like Jay mentioned Vegas. I've talked to people in Europe who are so confused by this. And I don't think it's going to be this way down the road either in the U.S. And it's important for new bettors here in the States to understand that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe PointsBet will keep this marketing strategy going as they expand into new states, even though their liabilities will expand with it. But I don't see it happening, and I don't love the precedent they're setting here. It's as I tweeted yesterday, it's weird. This whole thing is it's weird.
So the reason, and you know me, I've been okay with most of these going forward. This one, I guess the only thing for me that's just a little strange is just the timing of it all, and the fact that, so when they did the Alabama thing and they paid that, like, Alabama was such a huge favorite at the time to win like a national championship. And like there were, when they've done these other ones, it's always been on these just massive favorites, like way late in the season. Well, Lamar Jackson, let's be for real. Yeah. Okay. He's moved into the betting favorite to win the MVP, but I mean, there are still 5 weeks left in the NFL season here. And not only are there 5 weeks left in the NFL season, but this is a guy whose playing style could easily equal an injury and could easily, like, I don't know. It's not like we're heading into week 16 or week 17 and they're doing this. Like, it's week 12. Like, there's still a month and a half of football to be played where, things could go way crazy. And I mean, Patrick Mahomes was the prohibitive favorite for the longest time, and then he got hurt, and what happened now? So I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just the timing and everything like that just seems odd to me.
Yeah, the big play here is like it's retention, right? You want people to like the product and come back. But what about the people who are holding Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson tickets? How do they feel about this? Like, why are you paying out Lamar tickets when I'm sitting here with like a Russell Wilson ticket with virtually the same odds as Lamar Jackson? Like, why are you doing that? I think, I would certainly look at that like, what are you guys doing here? If I was in that position, I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I don't love it. I've made that very clear on this podcast. Yeah. And every time I see it, I kind of cringe.
Part of the timing and the promotion of it, as well as I was thinking and looking ahead, was mentioning that next week's Thanksgiving, and you've got some of the biggest bet games are going to be not only the NFL on Thanksgiving Day, but the college football the following week, the big rivalry games. You've got college basketball tournaments across the board. So they know that there's a lot of betting coming forward in the next 10 days, some of the biggest bet days of the season, really underrated from a Friday standpoint, and the Saturday games after Thanksgiving, on how much activity and handle they'll get, and they're trying to capture probably some of that and get that exposure going into that. So the lead into that, I think, is part of this. And like you said, we've seen PointsBet do this before, and we don't really see, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but I don't see them, the true numbers coming out. They're not disclosing, maybe full disclosure on the total handle, maybe at times, and the amount of bets and the people that have what stages they're buying, and that's maybe where some of those other stories come out. But that's some of my thoughts on their promotion of it, the timing of it.
it could be the type of better they're trying to go after as well. I mean, Lamar Jackson was a long shot going into the season, so maybe they're trying to go get, pay out some of these guys who go after, those long shots and those parlays, that type of thing.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
these are the things
extra money in their account.
Yeah. So I don't know
for Thanksgiving Day, but regardless, won't be the last time. So we'll probody talk about these. Probably talk about these more because it certainly won't be the last time. All right, so let's talk about something that gets basically talked about ad nauseum in sports betting Twitter, and you guys follow it, I follow it, and actually I was kind of I kind of got in the middle of it a little bit this past weekend or something, but being, quote unquote, on the right side, quote unquote, on the wrong side of a betting line or of a bet or whatever it might be. And Jay, I don't know if you know this or not, but our friend Brett that is on this podcast does cheat on us, and he goes and does another podcast as well. So he is not exclusive to us. And as much as we love having Brett on this podcast, he goes and he moonlights with other people. And I just wanted you to know that. So Brett goes and moonlights on a podcast with other people. And I put out a tweet after the Patriots game, and I said, another Pats cover, cash another ticket. Let the people tell you that you are on the wrong side. Smile and say you're probably right. Then go buy yourself a nice steak and an expensive bottle of wine while they rant about how unfair life is. And it was more of a tongue-in-cheek thing because, as you well know, like the one thing about betting, the hashtag, smart bettors and sharp bettors and betting Twitter is nobody loves to bet against the Patriots more than like sports betting Twitter, right? Like they want to be the person who, when the Patriots finally don't cover, or when the Patriots lose, that they can say, hey, I'm on the other side. I was on the other side. Told you so. They love it so incredibly much. And so basically I was just kind of throwing a little bit of a jab out there, but certainly not like, any sort of thing that I thought was, malicious or something like that or whatever. But, I went ahead and one of the guys that does the podcast with Brad, I'm not going to mention his name. Well, just for our purposes, we'll call him Captain Clown Shoes. And so Captain Clown Shoes comes back and tweets at me and said, you were on the wrong side. Keep making the market better for the rest of us. And so, so he goes out and says that or whatever. And all I did was respond. I said, oh, wrong side. Please do tell, because I'm very interested. I'm all ears here. And, then there was no rational response, because there was no response as to what is the right side, what is the wrong side. And all he just says is like, oh, I'm not going to educate you. You just keep making the market better for people like me or something or whatever. And so it just kind of went on and on from there. And then, that's just that's kind of how that all just kind of plays out. But it's very interesting to me, this whole right side, wrong side thing, because the very nature of a betting market is that at some point there is no right side or wrong side, because it's gotten to a point where it's incredibly efficient. If there was a sharp side, then the sharps would continue to bet that side until it became no longer a sharp side. You know what I mean? That's the whole nature of a market, of an open market and of a betting market. And so I'm not betting numbers at close very often, right? I mean, I got the Patriots at -3.5. That thing closed at 5.5, 6 at places. And so was I on the right side? Was I on the wrong side? Was I on the whatever? I mean, to me, a lot of times I think this whole right side, wrong side thing is people just getting their feelings hurt whenever they lose a bet that they thought that they were fairly confident in. I don't understand this whole gigantic thing about wanting to point the finger and saying that people are right and wrong.
I agree with the pointing of the finger and the thoughts, because there's so many opinions out there, and for those that are in the tout industry, you're always going to get criticized, and then for those that put out on Twitter, you're always at risk of people criticizing you for your thoughts. But the right side, wrong side argument, I think is a better or a handicapper. As you go back through the games, you want to go back through box scores and look at and kind of see plays, and you're trying to improve your ability to then see value in numbers moving forward. But right side or wrong side, an example of that game, the Patriots had less than 300 yards offense against the Eagles, but Eagles had even less yards. Many of the NFL games come down to a coin flip, oftentimes in the fourth fourth quarter, and you can then try to make the argument right side or wrong side. But an example of a wrong side would have been in the Super Bowl where the Patriots were favored and getting blown up by the Falcons, who built a huge lead. If you had the Patriots and they come back and cover miraculously, that was a wrong side winner, and you have to just suck it down. If you had Atlanta, to me, that you had a right side, maybe you handicapped it and it played out right, but it just loses, and that's no different. I always use the poker analogies. You can get your money in good, and guess what? You can still lose because the probability or the numbers don't come in and they hit the 2-outer or the 4-outer on the river, and that's the part of gambling. And same with the sports, and you have to look at the turnovers, and you have to look at how an injury that happened during a game, and you can make all the arguments right side or wrong side, but try to evaluate in a positive way to and a realistic look at how you're handicapping and looking at the games, and then kind of break down. And that's why I use all these box scores, and I try to go back through. And yeah, it's frustrating when you seemingly have the right side and it plays out how you expected, but you lost. But that's part of it. The other is the comment on the sharp. Sharp means sharps comes from the term that the people are sharpening the number. For example, if you bet on a total and you bet over 46 and it ultimately closes 50, the guys that were sharp were the guys that sharpened that number for the sports book, and they moved it from 46 to 47 to 48. You're not so sharp if you're betting it at 50.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's the wrong side, because you might have made your number and it was 49 or 50 to start, and or you've evaluated some other things late in the week that still drive the number. Oftentimes at this time of year, you're going to see the weather is going to impact, and you're going to see the lines, the totals move down because of weather more impacting, not necessarily the matchups. And so you've got to look at all of those things when you're evaluating. But I guess back to the topic, right side or wrong side will always be argued and I guess debated on what side. And I think is a better, you have to look realistically on how you're coming up with your plays and how you're looking at them, evaluating, and then look at the statistical breakdown and determine that.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I go back and I review every single week, like every single one of my bets, and go through and take a look at whether I felt I handicapped a game wrong. Like, I don't necessarily I don't know if there's a right side or wrong side, as it is just I was wrong in the way that I handicapped the game. Like, I thought the game was going to play out a different way. And so I don't know if there's a right side or wrong side of a number, or if I was just incredibly wrong on the way that a game played out. I mean, going back to this Patriots-Eagles game and Captain Clown Shoes coming at me and saying that I was on the wrong side. And as you mentioned, so the Patriots, right, they had in this game more total plays, more total yards, more yards per play, more passing yards, fewer penalties, and also had fewer turnovers. So if you're going to tell me that I'm on the wrong side when literally nearly every single statistical category that matters is in favor of the team that won, then tell me exactly then, Captain Clown Shoes, how I was on the wrong side of the bet. And so, all these people just want to point their finger and say, oh yeah, wrong side, when it was really all it was the game didn't play out how you thought. And so now you're kind of like lashing out here. Brett, sorry that we talked for 5 to 8 minutes on this on this without letting you chime in here, but by all means, go ahead.
Well, no, it's a very interesting topic, and I try not to get too caught up in it, because we're working with a one-game sample. Like, the majority of the time, the final scoreboard isn't going to tell the whole story. The box score isn't going to tell the whole story. I mean, hell, the underlying numbers and analytics don't tell the whole story, because it's 60 minutes of football. If we could run a game through 10,000 simulations, then yeah, we're far more able to say that the Patriots were absolutely the right side over the Eagles at this number, or the other way around. But these are human beings on a football field for one day, and there are so many different variables that are either random or completely unpredictable that compound in these small samples, like a missed extra point or a botched call by a referee. These are things that impact every game, and we're working with such small edges against the books that most of the time it's near impossible to say whether one side was correct and the other wasn't. And that was certainly the case, in my opinion, of the Patriots game on Sunday. I don't know which side was the right side, because we only have that 60-minute sample, and it was pretty close in my eyes. And if you could look at like the Texans-Ravens game from last week and say, okay, the Ravens were obviously the right side, and I agree with you. The Ravens were better. They deserved to cover, but they were better on that day. Like, if you ran that game back this week and you take public action out of it, how do the books cap this game? It's not going to be Ravens minus 34. It's going to be maybe a point higher at most than last week, because the sample's too small to say that the Ravens are that much better over the long term than Houston. So the right side versus wrong side stuff is kind of ridiculous to me. I look at teams and coaches and player performances over as large a data set that makes sense because that's all you can really do. But the most important thing really is just getting the best possible number,
right,
if you want to beat the books.
And that is it. And right. And like that's why like most bettors, and this goes back to kind of what we were talking about before, even last week when we brought up the deal, like, right side, wrong side, this really applies to about 2 to 3% of bettors out there, because they're the only people who are looking at these games, as the lines are released and as the lines are kind of moving throughout the course of the week, with the first injury reports that come out on Wednesday, the second injury updates that come out on Thursday and stuff. Like most of the time, most of these people are just betting like closing line stuff. Well, that's not my style. That's not Jay's style. That's not your style. Like I'm betting early in the week when I feel like that a line might be going to move against me, right? When I'm leaning towards the side pretty heavily. I think there's no better example than, I told you guys last week, whenever we were running through the week ahead, look ahead. I told you guys that I had the Cardinals in my account. I got the Cardinals in my account at 13, right? And I jumped on it early. I thought that line was too high. It was what it was. Well, that is a classic case of having to get the right number there, because if you were holding the 9.5 ticket where this thing closed at a lot of books, Jay, you're sitting there and you're wanting to jump off a bridge, because of the way that played out.
You had the right side in that case. And yeah, you just got a brutal ending there to get it to 10. But the other thing is just to comment on the right side. You must always, and I can't stress this enough, is you just have to be willing to change your opinion and change not your approach, but you have to be able to change with what's happening weekly because of injuries. We've got I think we've had 15 backup quarterbacks now that have been at starters this season. You have to be able to change your opinion, because we all go back to early in the season. The Dolphins were arguably, in the past decade plus, for sure, we were saying this is the worst team and the worst talent we have seen. And I'll hear it over and over. We're never betting on the Dolphins. We're never putting them in a contest again. We're never playing them. And then they rattle off 5 straight covers. Mm-hmm. I mean, 5 straight they win. You've got a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, who now are so bad and winless. And I commented over and over, they just are not going to win running the ball 18 times a game for 60 yards a game, worse than the league. And then you look at season-long stats, and now you have to adjust. Guess what? The Bengals last 2 weeks, they've rushed for over 150 yards, 173 last week. And so the coordinator's changing the approach. We saw that with the Vikings going run heavy. You have to be able to try to get information and look at things every single week and evaluate, and then break down the matchups, and obviously get the best numbers as you can and evaluate what you think is the value in the number and bet accordingly. But there's no answer. The turnovers play such an important part. You can't handicap those. You got kickoff returns and punt returns that you maybe don't handicap those. And that's part of the game and part of the gambling and part of the way it goes. And you have to be willing to understand and take those beats as well.
Yeah, I think that, to kind of put a bow on this, and Brett, I think you would also agree with this, and you and I have a pretty good debate every Friday on the various games and stuff. But I think you also have to be able to open your mind, and you have to be able to not only accept criticism, but be self-critical as well. And you were completely right on the Patriots against the Ravens, and you said that they were not going to be able to contain Lamar Jackson, and that was something that certainly played into the way that I looked, more so at the Ravens team moving forward, but even the Patriots team in general. And so, like, the reason I've been able to have success in gambling for as long as I have, and the only reason that I'm able to gamble as high as I do and put the type of money in play that I have, is that I play a role on this podcast, and I play a bit on Twitter and things like that. But like, I'm not so cocky and I'm not so set in my ways that I'm going to sit back and allow myself to fall into traps and ruts that's going to cost me money over the long term here, because that's just, I'm not in this, I am in that population of people that I'm not in this for fun. It is fun to me, but I'm in this to make money. Like I like the money that I make out of it. I like to go buy things with the money that I make out of it. I use it as like, my play money, my money that I'm able to go and take trips and vacations and stuff like that. And so I don't make money doing this, and then I don't get to do that stuff that I like to do. And so, I'm evaluating, I'm self-evaluating, I'm changing how I look at things, I'm changing how I go about my process all the time, constantly. And so for this whole right side, wrong side, and, whatever, and getting in this way where it seems like everybody wants to get cute and always bet against the Patriots because like that's the cool thing to do. And, we talk about it all the time is like this, you fancy play syndrome in poker. I think there's fancy play syndrome in sports betting as well. And Brett, you've accused yourself of that from time to time. And I think as long as we're all aware of where our deficiencies and shortcomings are, then you can become better and stay better and not have to point fingers at people.
Yeah, we're not only learning more and more about these teams every week. I'm learning how to bet every single week based on what I'm seeing and just having action and seeing how the market adjusts to different things. Like, if you want to beat the book and more importantly beat the market, really that's the most important thing. If you want to be quote unquote sharp, you have to make these adjustments and kind of learn as you go and be critical of yourself and change.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So let's look ahead to week 12 here. This is an interesting week for me. On first glance, when Brett and I were looking through this as the early lines podcast and video that we do early in the week, I didn't know if this was going to be a card that I was going to end up getting much action down on. And then here I sit, and I've actually got a few different bets already in my account this week. Jay, let's start with you. Are there any bets that are already in your account here in week 12?
Yeah, I often talk about underdogs, and I'll mention that I am playing the Jets this week against the Raiders. But let me go to a favorite that I've got coming off a bye this week, and I've laid 3 with the Tennessee Titans. You're starting to see some minus 120s. There are a few 3.5s popping up. But when I go through my evaluation and I use my rushing numbers and guidelines, this is one of the games this week that I think is going to have a good size edge. Good enough, not like monster edge like the Ravens have had in recent weeks or some of their opponents, but a good enough size edge over the Jacksonville Jaguars to warrant this. The Jags got absolutely run over at the point of attack last week, giving up 264 rushing yards. And Titans, we already know, have been a run heavier team, and now with Tannehill, they're able to balance it out a little bit more, and he's playing better at the quarterback position. So I made the case that the Titans off the bye are going to be able to control the line of scrimmage, probably have more clock possession time, and be able to balance the attack enough where I think they're going to win this game. And I use a lot of numbers that if you win, you often cover if it's a competitively lined game of 6 or less. And I think in this case, the Jaguars just are starting to show signs. Last week, not only did they give up, and certainly when they fall behind, they get out of your game plan and they're not going to run the ball as much, but they only ran the ball 9 times last week for 29 yards. And if that's anywhere close to that this week with the Titans, who are, again, the team that's going to rely more on the ground game and balance it out, I think they're going to have a tough time again this week. Division game, Tennessee off a bye. I play the Titans this week.
Brett, a game that you and I kind of talked about earlier in the week, and I ended up getting down on it, but not necessarily on a side like we had talked about, but I dug in a little bit further on this Bills and Broncos game. And the more I kind of looked into this, and you've talked about as happy as you are for your Bills team, that you still feel like this defense is a little bit overrated, and that you certainly feel like that this team is vulnerable and leaky in certain spots here. And I actually started looking at this Denver team and what they've done with Allen under center here, and they're not completely inept and nutless. And so when this thing bottomed out at 37, I went ahead and jumped on the over in this game. I think that the Bills are going to be able to score on the Broncos. I think the Broncos are going to be able to score on the Bills. And, shortly after I got that, I think about 12 hours later, this thing got as high as 38.5. Now there's been some buyback now and it's back down to 37.5. But I think that, look, Josh Allen's going to have some success against this Denver team. Denver's going to have some success against Buffalo. And when we kind of look at this game overall, 37 points. I need 37 points here. I think that this is a game that I would weirdly I think this thing could go over by like 10 points.
Oh, wow. Oh, certainly you've got two quarterbacks that are turnover prone, and so you could get points that way alone.
And that was the other thing, right? Yeah, I mean, the other thing is there might be some short field situations in this game.
Especially, I mean, it's going to be windy. It's always windy down there this time of year. We're probably looking at like 15 mile, maybe even 20 mile per hour winds, higher gusts. So, I mean, that's Josh Allen and Brandon Allen flinging the rock around in those conditions. You're always going to have opportunities if you're a defense, and all that does is create better field position and potentially touchdowns to compile some points. So I don't know how the Bills honestly are going to move the football in this game. I can see the Broncos running the football and having success. As crazy as it sounds, I think the Broncos are a better team. So I certainly like the Broncos as a side, but I can see this going over just from opportunities from turnovers. I think that's a good bet. Yeah.
And the other I got in my oh yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I would just want to comment on one thing outside of statistics, and maybe Brett can lend some insight. Over the years as I've handicapped, and I can't give you definitive numbers. It's just something I've noted. Playing up in Buffalo and playing at Ralph Wilson Stadium is very underrated. It's one of the toughest stadiums to go play in. And when I've always said this, I definitely will not play Denver this week. And that's not to say they won't win or be the right side. And I haven't made a bet on this. And I definitely agree that Buffalo is, for their record, their statistical profile and things don't quite match up, and they've had a number of wins against teams that have not winning records, and they're taking advantage maybe of a softer schedule. But then so is New England. But my comment is that what I look for when a team's going to Buffalo is not only the weather conditions now that's going to be near freezing temps and windy, but a young quarterback, a rookie quarterback, a quarterback that has not played in this environment before. It's very difficult, and you can't handicap turnovers. You can't handicap, how our team's certain players going to perform. But I've always thought that if I can get a team, even a quarterback maybe that's been a first year now in his second year, but hasn't played in the stadium before and played in this environment before, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And so I oftentimes will find myself playing the Bills, even when we're not very good teams in the last many years. And now this year, I think their defense is certainly good enough. And yeah, Denver showed well, but remember, this is back-to-back games. They lost the way they lost last week. They were good enough to get ahead of the Vikings by 20 at halftime, but the way they lost, I think this is a tough spot for Denver this week and their young quarterback to go in.
You are playing the Jets this week, as am I, though not play. I have them in a teaser with the Seahawks, so I have the Jets as well as home dogs to the Raiders. I think that they are going to have. So we've seen this with Darnold, right? And we see this with a lot of middling quarterbacks. Is just Darnold has played well against bad defenses and has played really poorly against good defenses. Well, the Raiders have a bad defense, and so I expect Darnold to be at least somewhat competent in this game and be able to keep this game within, I got 8.5, plus 8.5 on the Jets. And so I feel pretty good about that. And this Seahawks team, I'm just doing some speculating here with this Eagles squad, and they are pretty damn beat up. Alshon Jeffrey still practicing on the side of the field. Jordan Howard not cleared for contact. And now then Nelson Aguilar popped up on the injury report as well. And we just saw, of course, the Seahawks team, this doesn't have a defense near as good as the Patriots does. But, Carson Wentz, when he has no weapons to throw to, like whatsoever, this offense is toothless. And so I went ahead and took the Seahawks up to over a touchdown in that one. And then finally, the other thing that is in my account already this week is I went ahead and speculated on the Packers at 3 here, because I feel like this thing is going to be severely on the move when George Kittle and Manny Sanders officially get ruled out of this game. I'm playing doctor, and this was only for a smaller stake than I normally bet here, but I reading the kind of between the lines here when Shanahan says that all four, like Brett, when Shanahan comes out and says when all four are game time decisions and said, quote unquote, is going to come down to the wire, then all four of these dudes that are, big time playmakers for this 49ers team, you have to think that at least half of them don't play. I mean, you normally don't go 4 for 4 playing when he says it's going to come down to the wire.
I agree. And those are 4 big time players. As we've seen the last 2 weeks, the Niners have struggled without these guys in the lineup. So, I know you don't like to play doctor, but I think it's a good read given what we've seen so far in the practice reports, I don't think Kittle's going to play, and Manny Sanders could play, but he's going to be nowhere near 100%.
Yeah, and with that being the Sunday night game as well, my thought is like, look, if it comes out that these guys aren't going to play, this thing is going to shift to Packers. I mean, this thing might go all the way to a pick, and it wouldn't even surprise me if it flew all the way, through to like a 1 or something, because there's just all the betting attention is going to be shifted to that game, and you tell the public that the 49ers have no weapons with Aaron Rodgers coming to town. I think that line would be on the move, and on the move quickly. So I tried to get out in front of it. Who knows? Maybe all 4 of them play, and I get a horrible side on this. But I played doctor and it's won for me before, and I played doctor and I've gotten burned. So hopefully I don't get burned this time.
No, but I think looking at how the market is going to shift like that is a good lesson for people out there who don't think about it. Just getting ahead of it, and even if it is there's certainly some gambling in it. Just having a read and going with it is pretty sharp in this play.
One other comment on the line moves is, part of what saved me I lost last week, but part of what saved me was teaser bets again.
Mm-hmm.
We managed to tease the Bears and tease the Eagles up, and what your comment on the Seahawks, for example, if you like Seattle and you see that line's 2.5, 2 coming down, you still have the ability to tease that up above the key numbers, even at 1.5 to get it up above 7. And that's really important. And as you talk about these other games, there are 3 that could potentially flip. If you can anticipate that and see the injuries and feel that, okay, the line's going to move a little bit more, or look at some of the sites that are tracking the percentage of bets and anticipate or understand that here's where the line's going to move. If I'm going to play teasers, especially, which we're finding is a better way to get your, some of these games that are landing. That's how you take advantage of getting the better number, because 1.5 to 2.5 maybe on the point spread for Seattle isn't going to make as big a difference, but on a teaser, certainly the impact in a late game situation, for example, like the Bears last week, that was all the difference in covering the entire way, and then a late Rams touchdown, and potentially the turnover on downs that could have potentially cost you, but you get the number you want in the teaser.
Let's talk about these last 2 marquee games and then get out of here. We won't spend too much time on them. But the Cowboys and Patriots, which is basically an island game, the NFL blessed us with only 2 afternoon games. What in the hell is going on, NFL? I mean, move one of the games to the afternoon.
Wow, yes.
I have 4 TVs for a reason. I mean, two games, and of course one of those games is Jags-Titans. So this Cowboys-Patriots game is basically an island game. And Brett, I can only imagine the handle on this game of people starting their chase even earlier than normal. I think this line could be crazy on the move as people start to realize in these early games that they're going to lose their bets.
There's going to be so much handle on this game. It's going to be insane. And it's a game that I don't know what to do with. Like, the number looks too high, but it always looks too high with the Patriots. I fall into this trap all the time. And we still don't know what's going on with Amari Cooper. That's going to be really a big factor in how I lean in this game. As we talked about that on Tuesday, but man, I honestly don't know what to do with this game as of right now.
Jay, this thing, it would not surprise me, depending on how injury news comes out and how like the morning games go, especially if it's like a bloodbath for the public out there. This game could move a full point and a half in any direction. I have no idea which direction, but it would not surprise me to see this game move that incredibly much when it's basically the only afternoon game people are going to turn their attention to.
Yeah, this is going to be a big handle and a big decision for the sports books. Probably second of the week, though, behind the Monday night game that we'll talk about. But I haven't played this, and back to the Patriots. They've found a way, and their defensive strength, I think, here. I think let me double check the total on this. I know the Patriots are taking a higher percentage of the bets, and we see this at DraftKings, maybe upwards of 60 offshore, and you're seeing a lot of the market showing more than 60% of the spread bets on New England here, which is lane 6.5. But let me double check that total. It's actually come down, correct? From, I think it had opened 46.5, 47. It's down to 45.5 in places. And back to the Cowboys. This is a pretty big coaching situation, a matchup favoring the Patriots as well. And we haven't seen the Cowboys be able to beat a winning team yet. They beat the Eagles as their best win, but they've just not been able to get it done against the better teams. And so I don't have a position yet, but you definitely want to watch the injuries, like you said, and make a decision.
Yeah, I think it would be Brett, I think it would be a situation where if we get a good inkling that Amari's not going to go, and then Gilmore basically locks up Gallup, and at that point, then the Cowboys have to try to get this done with just Zeke and Randall Cobb. I don't know if I would pull the trigger on the Patriots, and that might be too late because at that point it might be all the way through the 7 to like 7.5 at that point. But it might be too late to pull the trigger on them, and then at that point. But I think it certainly shifts how I view this game. It's crazy to think that just one player tilts it so much, but when you give Bill Belichick a clear blueprint as to how to scheme for you, it's just more times than not, he's just able to do it. He's just friggin' able to do it so often. And so without Amari out there and them, then all you got to do is remove Gallup and basically say, beat us with an old ass Randall Cobb. I don't know, man. It's tough for me to get there,
Yeah, and we saw what this offense looked like before they brought Amari in. That's why they brought Amari in.
Right.
So,
exactly.
This line should move through 7 if he's rolled out.
And finally, the Monday night game, which again, as you mentioned, Jay, is going to take just a massive amount of money here, and rightfully so, is this Ravens-Rams game. The Ravens at DraftKings are 3.5-point favorites. Over on FanDuel, this has now moved to 3. So a little bit of money coming in over there. But, let's take a look at how this really breaks down. Lamar Jackson has been so incredibly dynamic, but I dug into this game a little bit last night. I will continue to dig in a little bit more. But what I continue to find is this Rams defense actually matches up fairly well with Lamar Jackson. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I think that I want to take a side in this game, but when we look at this total here sitting at 46.5, I don't know if this, because we know kind of how inept the Rams offense has been as of late. I started to lean towards an under look in this game. Curious as to y'all's thoughts on this, but this Rams team, when you look at kind of their front four and the linebacker situation there, it started to make sense for me that maybe they are actually one of the few teams in the league that are built to, no one's going to shut Lamar Jackson down, but maybe deal with Lamar Jackson a little bit better than other teams have been able to.
I'll comment that, again, there's a few ways you look at a total. It has come down. You're not getting the best number, but if you evaluate, you can still play it first half. You can look at 23. That potentially could come down another half. But I agree with you. I worked the numbers, and the Rams' run defense is solid. They're probably going to have more success containing them to a sense. I definitely know that I'm not going to play the Ravens here, even though the rushing numbers might supposedly play out accordingly. Not as nearly as dynamic as they have for recent weeks. You're really betting against the freight train here that is really playing well, the Ravens. And the look ahead here was 1, now it's 3, and the Rams, I think you're on the right situation here. Maybe the total's a better look because the Ravens defense has been playing better. And I'll tell you, I did some numbers on Goff. It's just they don't trust him. Last week, they ran the ball, I think 34. They only ran, I think, 52 snaps offensively in the game, and 34 were running plays. They didn't have the confidence. He had, I think, around 110 yards passing until that last drive against the Bears when they moved it down, and he had a little more success. But he's really struggling. He's not able to and he's got the receiver weapons. He's just not able to get it done. So I think the under is the better look. Like I said, I'm still debating whether I'm going to pull it on the Rams, but my numbers on the rushing probably and the way Jackson's getting it done is going to make it tough.
Brett, the most run heavy team in the league with the Ravens, and this Ravens defense has actually started to play much, much better when they traded for Marcus Peters and then got Jimmy Smith back and were able to move Marlon Humphrey over into the slot. Now you have one of the better corner trios in all of the league here, and you've seen this Ravens defense really start to shut some of these teams down, and I don't have an incredible amount of confidence in Jared Goff and the Rams to put up a lot of points on this Ravens team. And even if the Ravens do find some success here, as Jay mentioned, it's probably going to be on the ground, and that keeps the clock running a lot. I don't know. There was just a lot of things that were kind of pointing me towards the under here.
Yeah, I can see it getting there. I will say that this Monday Night Football game is one of my favorites of the year for a side. The public perception on the Rams week to week is so volatile that there are spots to both fade them and back them week to week. And on top of that, the narratives behind this Ravens team right now, like Lamar Jackson MVP and the 6-game winning streak behind the resurgence of this defense, that's driving so much action on Baltimore this week. Meanwhile, nobody is talking about the Rams. And you've got Goff back at home against a team that has struggled rushing the passer this week. And we know what happens when Goff's under pressure. That's where he is awful. I don't know if he's going to be under that pressure this week. And plus he gets Cooks and Woods back this week. This defense, like you said, Matt, is extremely underrated. I love this spot for the Rams, especially if you can get it at 3.5. And, like you said, that's where it is at DraftKings right now. So this is one of my favorite games of the week and maybe the year.
I like it. Is this a little foreshadowing maybe to your must make for tomorrow's?
We will be talking about this game tomorrow.
For tomorrow's
sure.
podcast. So a little bit of foreshadowing here for this one, guys. But as always, thanks for listening. We really do appreciate it. Of course, all of Jay's work can be found over at TheLines.com. So please go ahead and head over there. Take a look at all the upgrades. We continue to upgrade the lines each and every single week here. So continuing to make this odds feed a lot better, incorporating more books as well, more states. So you can kind of take a look across the country and see how these lines are taking shape, even if there's any regional bias that is going on as well. So be sure and take advantage of that. And of course, if you're going to play at any of these books, go to Play Picks, go to the lines, take advantage of all of the offers that we have at all the sports books. We really do have the very best ones that are possibly available to you. And so if you're going to play, take the sports books money, let them give you free bets and risk-free bets and deposit bonuses and match bonuses and all of these things like that, because we have such a little edge on these guys as it is to begin with. So if they're going to start us off with some sort of edge, you certainly need to take advantage of that. So be sure and do that before you sign up at any of these places. Make the lines and Play Picks your first stop whenever you get going for that. Guys, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, go and subscribe, rate, and review, and follow us on Twitter at PlayPicksUS, at TheLines US. For Brett, for Jay, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.